A small armada of U.S. Navy ships heads towards Venezuela. Its mission? To stem drugs sent from the South American country.
President Trump focusing on drugs coming to the coasts after reducing illegal border crossings to record lows.
They continue to send drugs into our country, Venezuela. They've been very nasty.
Right now, American warships are sailing towards Venezuela's coast. It's the biggest military buildup the region has seen in decades. But is this really about fighting drugs, or is something bigger happening here?
What I will say with respect to Venezuela, President Trump has been very clear and consistent. He's prepared to use every element of American power to stop drugs from flooding into our country and to bring those responsible to justice.
Let me break down what's actually going on. But before we jump into the details, please like, comment, and subscribe to my channel for more videos. President Trump has sent 7 warships to the waters near Venezuela. That includes over 4,500 American soldiers and Marines. There's even a nuclear submarine in the mix. The official reason? Fighting drugs cartels. But the reality is much more complex. The US government claims Venezuela's President Nicolás Maduro is running a massive drug operation. They say he leads something called the Cartel of the Suns. The Trump administration put a $50 million bounty on Maduro's head.
The Trump administration also recently doubling to $50 million its reward for the arrest of Venezuelan leader Nicolás Maduro, saying he violated U.S. drug laws.
That's twice what they once offered for catching Osama bin Laden. But here's where it gets really interesting. Venezuela isn't just sitting back and watching. Maduro has sent his own warships and drones to patrol the coast. He's calling up hundreds of thousands of militia members. He's telling his people to prepare an American invasion. The Venezuelan defense minister announced they are putting 15,000 troops on the border with Colombia to fight drug gangs.
Es muy grande la causa que defendemos. Así que el cambio de régimen, además de ilegal, es inmoral. Y aquí no lograrán ni colonizar, ni esclavizar, ni a Venezuela, ni a América del Sur, ni a nuestra América. Y si algún día tocan a Venezuela, toda la América se levantará por nosotros, por el pueblo de Bolívar.
So what's really happening here? Are we looking at the start of the war? Most experts don't think so. They say this is more like a big show of force. Think of it as a political theater with very real military hardware. Christopher Sabatini, who studies Latin America, calls it performance on both sides. He points out that 4,500 soldiers are not nearly enough to invade a country like Venezuela. Venezuela has mountains, jungles, and millions of people. You need a much bigger force for an actual invasion. But that doesn't mean the ships are just for show. They could do serious damage if Trump decides to act. They could launch missile strikes. They could try to grab Maduro in a quick operation. They could send boats carrying drugs. But a full invasion that seems unlikely. Trump has tried this before. During his first presidency, he backed a failed attempt to remove Maduro from power. That didn't work. The Venezuelan leader is still there, and some say he is stronger than ever. So why is Trump doing this now? There are a few reasons. First, there's the drug problem. Fentanyl and other dangerous drugs are killing Americans every day. Trump wants to show he's tough on the cartels that bring these drugs into the US. Venezuela is an easy target because most Americans already see Maduro as a bad guy. Second, there's politics at home. Trump supporters like it when he acts tough on foreign enemies. Sending warships makes him look strong and decisive. Third, there might be oil involved. Venezuela has the world's largest known oil reserves. That's a lot of money and energy security at stake. But when you have military ships from two countries facing each other, accidents can happen. One mistake, one misunderstanding, and suddenly you have a real fight on your hands. Venezuela's UN ambassador met with the Secretary General to complain about American threats. He said sending a nuclear submarine to fight drug dealers doesn't make sense. He's probably right about that. The legal questions are also messy. Some lawyers say Trump needs permission from Congress before using military force. But Congress is on vacation, and Trump signed secret orders giving himself more power to fight cartels. What does Venezuela actually have to do with drugs? The US government says Maduro and his top officials run drug trafficking networks. They claim Venezuelan gangs work with Mexican cartels to move cocaine into America. Maduro says that's all lies. He claims Venezuela is free from drug production, unlike neighboring Colombia. He says the US just wants to steal Venezuela's oil and overthrow his government. Who is telling the truth? It's hard to know for sure. The US hasn't shown much public evidence for its claim, but Venezuela definitely has problems with crime and corruption. The bigger picture here involves China and Russia too. Both countries have strong ties with Venezuela. China wants the US not to violate Venezuela's sovereignty. If America attacks Venezuela, it could push the country even closer to the US enemies. This also affects regular Venezuelan people. Millions have already fled their country because of economic collapse and political problems. Many live in the US with temporary protection, but Trump wants to deport them back to Venezuela. Some Venezuelans are so scared of being sent home that they are moving to Spain instead. They call it migrating twice. First they fled Venezuela, then they had to flee America too. What happens next? Nobody knows for sure, and that's part of the problem. The most likely outcome is more of the same. More threats, more military posturing, but no actual fighting. Trump might be hoping that Venezuelan military leaders will turn against Maduro to collect that $50 million reward. But there are risks. Maduro isn't going anywhere voluntarily. He's been in power for over a decade and survived previous attempts to remove him. His military still supports him, probably because they benefit from the current system. The worst case scenario is an accidental conflict that spirals out of control. Naval confrontations can escalate quickly. Once shooting starts, it's hard to stop. For now, most people in Venezuela's capital seem calm. They have heard these threats before. Many think it's just more political games between two leaders who like to act tough. But this time feels different. The military buildup is bigger, the bounty on Maduro is higher, and Trump has shown he is willing to use force when previous presidents might have held back. The next few weeks will tell us whether this is serious preparation for action or just the most expensive political theater in recent history. Either way, it's a dangerous game that could reshape Latin America for years to come.
Turning now to new developments in the Jeffrey Epstein saga, as pressure to release the government's case files continues to grow, despite the president's claim that the issue is a Democratic Party hoax. The Republican chairman of the House Oversight Committee, James Comer, announced late yesterday that the Justice Department would begin complying with his committee's subpoenas for documents and information tied to the case, and will start handing over that material on Friday. The news came just hours after President Trump's former Attorney General Bill Barr sat for a closed-door deposition as the first witness in the Oversight Committee's investigation into the Epstein files.
The most powerful man in the world just said that he couldn't care less about releasing files that could potentially destroy careers and reputations across Washington and beyond. But here's the twist. These same files likely contain his own name. We're talking about the Jeffrey Epstein documents, and Donald Trump's handling of this case has created something we rarely say in politics: a split between Trump and his most loyal supporters. Before we jump into the details, please consider subscribing to the channel. And also do like, share, and comment. Jeffrey Epstein wasn't just any criminal. He was a financier who built his entire life around knowing powerful people, politicians, business leaders, celebrities. Epstein collected relationships like trophies. When he died in jail in 2019, he took those secrets with him, or so it seemed. The government has roughly 100,000 pages of documents from their Epstein investigations. Think about that number for a moment. 100,000 pages. That's not just a case file. That's an encyclopedia of connections, conversations, and potentially damaging information. Trump knew this when he campaigned in 2024. He promised voters he would release these files. It was a popular promise, especially among his base who believed the government was hiding the truth about Epstein's powerful friends. But promises made during campaign don't always survive contact with reality. Trump and Epstein's were friends, not casual acquaintances. The relationship goes back to the late 1980s. In 2002, Trump told a magazine that Epstein was a terrific guy who was a lot of fun to be with. Trump even noted that Epstein liked beautiful women, and many of them are on the younger side. Flight logs showed Trump flew on Epstein private jets 7 times between 1993 and 1997. There are photos of them together at parties. Trump's contact information was in Epstein's address book.
But K-File's extensive reporting now shows the two shared a close social circle for nearly 2 decades, from private jet flights to high-profile parties, and that's only part of the story. Photos, flight logs, and court records help reveal how long their personal history really was.
This wasn't a distant business relationship. These men moved in the same social circles for years, but something changed. Trump claims they had a falling out, though the timeline keeps shifting. Sometimes Trump says it happened in 2004 over a real estate deal. Other times he says Epstein was stealing employees from his Mar-a-Lago resort. Most recently, Trump claimed he kicked Epstein out after Epstein behaved inappropriately with a member's teenage daughter. The truth is probably simpler. Powerful men often have complicated relationships that end badly. During his 2024 campaign, releasing the Epstein files seemed like an easy win for Trump. His supporters loved the idea. They believed these documents would expose Democrats and other political enemies. Trump's Attorney General Pam Bondi seemed to support this. In February, she told Fox News the files were sitting on her desk to review. But in July happened. The Justice Department released a memo saying they found no evidence of a secret client list. They also said no more documents would be released. Essentially, they were closing the book on public disclosure. Trump supporters erupted. They felt betrayed. These were people who had supported Trump partly because he promised transparency about Epstein. The anger was so intense that Trump did something unusual. He turned on his own base. He called their concerns a Democrat hoax and said he didn't want their support anymore if they kept pushing the issue. Instead of releasing the 100,000 pages the government already has, Trump's Justice Department asked courts to unseal grand jury materials. Grand jury files are different. They are usually much smaller and contain limited information. In Epstein case, they are roughly 70 pages compared to 100,000 pages. 3 different federal judges rejected these requests, but their reasoning was fascinating. Judge Richard Berman said the Justice Department's request seemed like a diversion from the real files. He pointed out that asking for 70 pages while sitting on 100,000 pages looked suspicious. Another judge, Paul Engelmeyer, was even harsher. He suggested the government was creating an illusion of transparency rather than providing real disclosure. Think about this strategically. If you wanted to look like you were being transparent without actually being transparent, this is exactly you would do. As for small files, court will reject while keeping the big files secret. In July, something unprecedented happened. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanchard, who used to be Trump's personal lawyer, conducted a 10-hour interview with Ghislaine Maxwell in prison.
Ghislaine Maxwell is in prison, and so a lot of people want to know if she's going to turn in powerful people. And I know you've talked in the past about Prince Andrew, and you've criticized Bill Clinton's behavior. I'm wondering, do you feel that she's going to turn in powerful men? How do you see that working out?
Maxwell is Epstein's former partner, currently serving 20 years for sex trafficking. The interview was supposed to gather more information about Epstein's network, but the timing raised questions. Why interview Maxwell now? Why use someone who used to work for Trump personally?
The Justice Department releases the audio and transcripts from its recent interview with Jeffrey Epstein's associate Ghislaine Maxwell. During her interview, Maxwell said she never saw Donald Trump act inappropriately when at Epstein's house. Soon after the interview, Maxwell was transferred to a lower security prison.
Victims' families were outraged. They saw this as giving Maxwell a platform to rewrite history, adding fuel to the fire. The Wall Street Journal reported on a bizarre birthday letter allegedly sent by Trump to Epstein in 2003. The letter contained suggestive content and was signed Donald. Trump immediately called it fake and threatened to sue the newspaper. But the timing was terrible. It came just as his administration was already under fire for handling the Epstein files. Whether the letter is real or not, it highlights the broader problem. There are documents out there that mention Trump and people want to know what they say. Republican Congressman James Comer's Oversight Committee decided to take matters into their own hands. They subpoenaed the Justice Department for all Epstein-related documents. This creates a political problem for Trump. His own party is not demanding transparency he seems unwilling to provide. The committee has also subpoenaed high-profile witnesses including former Presidents Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton, along with several former attorneys general and FBI directors. This isn't just about Epstein anymore. It's about credibility and trust. Trump's MAGA base supported him partly because they believed he would drain the swamp and expose government secrets. The Epstein files represented everything they thought he would fix. Powerful people protecting each other while ordinary Americans were kept in the dark. When Trump reversed course and called their concerns a hoax, it broke something fundamental in that relationship. Polling shows most Americans disapprove of how Trump's administration has handled the Epstein investigation. That includes many of his own supporters. The Epstein files controversy reveals something important about how power works in Washington. Even presidents face limits on what they can disclose. Maybe Trump learned something about those files that changed his mind about releasing them. Maybe his own legal team advised against it. Maybe the intelligence community pushed back. Or maybe Trump realized that transparency is easier to promise than to deliver, especially when you might be mentioned in the documents yourself. We still don't know what's in those 100,000 pages. We don't know exactly how Trump's name appears in the files, though we know it's mentioned. We don't know if other powerful figures are pushing behind the scenes to keep the files secret. We don't know what intelligence agencies might have told the administrations about the documents. What we do know is that this case has created an unusual split between the president and his base. That's significant because Trump's political power has always come from that unwavering support. The Epstein case touches on something deeper than politics. It's about accountability for the powerful. When wealthy, connected people face justice, the public wants to know the whole truth, but the truth is often complicated. Real transparency can hurt innocent people along with guilty ones. It can damage national security or ongoing investigations. The challenge is distinguishing between legitimate secrecy and convenient cover-ups. Trump promised his supporters he would be different from other politicians. He would release the files others wanted to hide. But now he's acting exactly like the establishment he once criticized. Whether this damages his political future depends on how his supporters ultimately react. Some will stick with him no matter what. Others feel genuinely betrayed. The Epstein files are not going away. Congress will continue investigating. Journalists will keep digging. And somewhere in government buildings across Washington, those 100,000 pages sit waiting, full of secrets that powerful people clearly don't want revealed. What are your thoughts on this matter? Please let me know in the comment section. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Most powerful man in the world just sat down with Vladimir Putin for 3 hours in Alaska, and they walked away with absolutely nothing to show for it. If you want to stay ahead of the biggest geopolitical stories shaping our world, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications. Donald Trump promised he would end the war in Ukraine within 24 hours.
Before I even arrive at the Oval Office, I will have the disastrous war between Russia and Ukraine settled. It will be settled quickly.
That was over 6 months ago. Yesterday's summit in Anchorage was supposed to be his big moment, his chance to prove he really is the ultimate deal maker. Instead, we got awkward silence and empty promises. Let me break down what actually happened, and more importantly, what it means for the war that's been raging for over 3 years. Trump rolled out the red carpet for Putin. Literally, fighter jets flew overhead. The two leaders shook hands like old friends. Putin even got a ride in the presidential limo they call the Beast. For a guy who's been treated like a global outcast since invading Ukraine, this was pure gold. But the warm welcome didn't translate into results. After nearly 3 hours of talks, both leaders faced the cameras. They read short statements, took zero questions, and basically admitted they got nowhere.
So there's no deal until there's a deal. I will call up NATO.
Putin wasn't much better. He talked about eliminating the root causes of the conflict. That's diplomatic speak for Ukraine's needs to surrender. So what went wrong? First, let's talk about what Russia actually wants. Putin's demands haven't changed much since this war began. He wants Ukraine to give up on joining NATO forever. He wants them to disarm. And he wants to keep all the Ukrainian territory his forces have captured. That's about 19% of the entire country. We're talking about Crimea, which Russia grabbed back in 2014. Most of the eastern Donbas region, parts of 4 other provinces. Putin also wants the West to lift sanctions. The same sanctions that have hammered Russia's economy for the past 3 years. Trump came into this meeting talking tough. He had threatened severe consequences if Putin didn't agree to a ceasefire.
It was always going to be, I was going to meet with President Putin, and then after that, I'm going to call the leaders and President Zelensky. I'm going to call President Zelensky, and then I'll call, probably in that order, the leaders.
He had already slapped massive tariffs on India for buying Russian oil, 50% tariffs. That's essentially a trade embargo. Trump linked in a Fox News interview right after the summit. He said he might wait 2 or 3 weeks before imposing new sanctions. Maybe that's not exactly the decisive action he promised. Here's what's really fascinating about this whole situation. The meeting happened in Alaska. And the location choice tells everything about how Putin thinks. Alaska used to be Russian territory. Russia sold it to America back in 1867 for $7.2 million. Putin's team specifically requested Alaska as the venue. They said it was logical since the two countries are neighbors there. But there's deeper symbolism at play. This is Putin showing the world that Russia still matters, that he can sit as an equal with the American president on what used to be Russian soil. The optics were a massive win for Moscow. For 3 years, Western leaders have refused to meet with Putin. They've called him a